May I remind everyone present that this meeting will be live streamed and recorded via the internet, and that this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? If a committee member wishes to speak, can they please put their hand up using the hand function if they can, or you can put your hand up if you can be seen on screen. If any participant has difficulty hearing or being heard or seen, then they should let me as chair or Democratic Services Officer know as soon as possible. If required, participants can dial into the meeting using a telephone. If for any technical reasons any person party to the proceedings is unable to hear, then the hearing will be adjourned for a short time to allow contact to be made. It's important to remember that all parties must hear all the proceedings unless they themselves decide to leave. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function. And for the sake of the recording, the chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues or to grab the attention of the chair or Democratic Services Office only. The allocated speaking minutes, where are we at? The allocated speaking minutes will be strictly adhered to, which just dropped off my screen. Right, moving on. Welcome all to this planning committee on Wednesday, 23rd of November 2022. Starting off on the agenda, apologies for absence, please.
I've not had any apologies directly through, Chair.
Okie dokie.
Could I give Ian Johnson's apologies, please? He is trying to log on from wherever he is, the football, but he can't get on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I offer Wendy Gilligan's apologies, please?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Declarations of interest under the Council's Code of Conduct, including whipping declarations. Any? No, no declarations of interest. Right, we move on to the reports of the Head of Regeneration and Planning. Agenda item 4, building regulation applications and other building control matters determined by the Head of Generation and under delegated powers. These are for noting. Can I take silence as assent?
Happy to note, Chair.
Thank you, Sandra. Item 5, planning applications determined by the Head of Regeneration and Planning under delegated powers. Same thing. Everyone happy to note?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, see hands waving.
Happy to note.
Excellent. Item 6, appeals. Ian Robinson, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've got one decision in the report today, which is a dismissed appeal relating to advertisements on Bondvine Dental Surgery on Eastgate and Cowbridge. When we determined the application, some of the signs were approved and some were refused. What we call a split decision. The inspector agreed with the council's decision, which was in essence that the accumulation of the number and scope of all the signage on the building would result in a cluttered appearance to the building, and that would have a harmful effect on the character of the area. So that appeal was dismissed. And there is just a separate note in the report in relation to a matter previously before committee, which is land at Porthkerry House in Porthkerry. This was the terrace that was constructed around a protected tree. So the applicant has now withdrawn their appeal against the enforcement notice that we served and agreed to remove the part of the terrace in proximity to the tree. We may well receive a future application in to retain what would be the remainder of the terrace. But for now, that appeal against the enforcement notice has been withdrawn. So the enforcement notice took effect on the 2nd of November.
Thank you, Ian. Any questions? Nope. Okay, moving on. Item 7, trees. 1, the delegated list. This is for noting as well. Yeah, everyone happy? Yeah, I see thumbs up from people. And no one arguing. Item 8, enforcement. Again, Ian, I think this is for you. We have two items. One, the land and buildings at 10 New Barn Holdings. If you'd like to make a start.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I'm okay, I'll share my screen, which contains the report, which in itself has the photographs in it. So this proposed enforcement action relates to land and buildings at number 10 New Barn Holdings near Flemingston, and it relates to the unauthorised change of use of land adjacent to number 10 for the purposes of storing a random assortment of containers, vehicles, caravans, trailers, vehicle parts, waste building material, etc., as set out in the report. The photographs here show the general untidy appearance to the land as a consequence of the storage of all these miscellaneous items. There's some aerial photographs here that shows sort of the scope and extent of how they are littered across the site. So it's fairly sort of straightforward in officers' view. This is a case of the use adversely affecting the character of the land and you know, consequently the kind of character of the countryside. So the enforcement action sought is to require the cessation of the use of the land for those storage activities and to require the removal of all of those items listed in the recommendation on page 37.
Any questions from the committee? Anyone would like to move officers' recommendations on this then? Thank you, Charles. Yes.
Can I just ask,
Charles?
that you've got it in the report from about 2007, and so it's very historical. Is that an issue?
No, no. If the use of the land had been continuous across that time, but based on officers' investigations, it appears that there has been some kind of ad hoc use of the land at points in time across a larger period of time. But there hasn't been that continuous breach for 10 years that would prohibit us from taking enforcement action. Well, you're on mute. Sorry,
You're muted, Councillor Camp. Charles.
I'm happy to move once Rhiannon's had a point.
Okay, thank you, Charles. Councillor Birch, Rhiannon.
I was going to move officers' recommendations.
We have a mover and a seconder then, and I see no one hands up against.
I will
Yeah, it's all done. It's been moved and seconded. Then thank you. Moving on then to enforcement 2, land at field access to the West of Village farmhouse, Colwinston. Ian again.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, you set out the address. This relates to a piece of land in Colwinston. As members can see on the plan on the screen, it's in the approximate position indicated in red on that first plan, sort of at the kind of threshold into this bit of land from the highway. This piece of land is identified in the conservation area as being an important open space, and also there being significant views across it to the countryside beyond. It's actually quite an important bit of land in terms of understanding the rural and countryside context of the village, the kind of views you get between houses through to the countryside beyond. So the specifics of this case relate to the wall and style along the front of the land. So this is a photograph here from May 2008, which showed the former gate and wall and the style. It's another photograph of it here. Subsequently, a chunk of this wall and the style have been removed, as shown in the report in these photographs here. Given the height of the wall and the style, the removal would have required consent, and we're of the view that their removal is harmful to the character of the conservation area. So even though the works are not sort of significant in scope and area, the test in the conservation area, as we previously discussed in committee, is does the work preserve or enhance? So actually any level of harm would fail that test. So what we are seeking is authorization to serve a notice to require the reinstatement of the wall and the style to its former condition.
Councillor Birch, you have your hand up.
2 points really. Whether the style was anything to do with the public right of way, I'd be interested to know that. And I would like to move the officers' recommendations, please.
I'd like to second, Chair, if I may.
Thank you, Councillor Cave.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Birch. There's no public right of way through there at the moment. I assume maybe once upon a time there was, but there isn't presently. But it's nevertheless it's kind of still it's historic fabric, which is kind of integral to the historic character of the conservation area.
Do we know if the lump of stone that was the stile still exists, or whether it was smashed up?
I don't know. I'm sorry.
No. No, it's a shame. Right, we have it moved. We have it seconded. Oh, we had it seconded. I apologise, Christine. You seconded. Any comments? Any further comments? I take silence as assent. Fine, that's it. That's carried. Moving on. We come to the planning applications. First one is
Chair.
land. Yes.
Sorry, Chair. I think we've missed out the minutes of the previous meeting held on 19th of October. I'm not sure. Can I check? If
We have, absolutely. I apologise. Yes, I jumped from apologies to declarations of interest. I apologise profusely. Everyone, can someone? We have the meet. You've all had a chance to read the minutes. Can someone please move and second? Thank you.
I'm happy to move.
I see lots of hands up. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Anthony. So
I got another comment to make.
Oh, sorry, Mark. Yeah, on what?
Yeah, it's just on the third application on Myrtle Close. Although I've spoken on it, I will look at this application. I've spoken on this at the town council. I will look at it with fresh eyes. Okay, and I'm not going to be biding what I said previously.
Yeah. As local member, are you intending to speak on this?
I'm a planning member. I will speak on it anyway, but there probably won't be maybe a local member that may also want to speak on this application.
I'd call you first if you wanted to speak on it in the debate.
I think another local member would like to speak on it as well, I believe.
Possibly. Right, moving back then to land at St. Bride's Road, Wick. Ian, if you'd like to present. We have no public speakers on this.
Thank you, Chair. Share my screen once again. So this is a planning application for 17 affordable homes at the edge of the village of Wick, proposed kind of under the umbrella, if you like, of policy MD10 of the local development plan. This is the policy which gives scope for small scale affordable housing developments kind of at the edge of settlements in the countryside. So it's land which ordinarily for market housing probably would be contrary to planning policy, but in recognition of affordable housing need and the importance that we place upon affordable housing need in planning terms, it's recognition of whilst there is likely to be an impact on the character of the land and a change in the appearance and character from countryside to a residential character, that can in some cases be outweighed by the affordable housing needs. So this is the proposal. It is for 17 houses. It's set essentially in sort of two banks, so a continuation of the existing sort of prevailing pattern of development fronting the highway, and then a secondary row of houses to the rear. If you see, actually the site boundary aligns with kind of the extent of back gardens of these existing houses along the road, albeit quite long back gardens. So 17 dwellings, new access point directly off St. Bride's Road here into the site, with turning facilities, an area of public open space centrally within the site. And the kind of main issue probably to highlight that's come out of the consultation process and representations we've received is kind of highway safety issues and concerns relating to existing speed of traffic along the main road. So representations from the Community Council and Councillor Stallard, I believe, have identified concerns with traffic speed along the road. The members might note that condition 11 relates to a VAS signage, which is one of those kind of flashing signs that warns you when you are exceeding the speed limit. There has been representations made requesting that a kind of average speed camera be a requirement of the back of this application. We've considered this in kind of consultation with the Highways Department. Ultimately, the conclusion of officers is that whilst there may be a problem with the speed of traffic in the area at the moment, requirements by condition or by legal agreement associated with the planning application need to be justified and necessary to make the specific development acceptable. And given that the proposed access benefits from adequate visibility along the road, and given that it's a kind of a pre-existing issue, we don't feel that we could reasonably require a average speed camera by condition with this proposal. Notwithstanding that, the sort of vehicle activated signage would be an improvement on the existing situation. So I think that's probably positive and betterment in some degree. But you'll note the report sort of rationalises and the kind of the absence of a requirement for an average speed camera. The other kind of key point to mention in respect of kind of highways and transport and movement is that there's a new footway proposed to link the site to existing footway, and a requirement for a form of crossing across to the bus stop on the opposite side of the road, and the detail of that is required by condition as well.
Thank you,
Chair.
Ian. Caris, Councillor Stallard, you're the local member. Would you like to come in now?
Yes. Well, I understand everything Ian has said, but I mean, I think I just feel obliged really to raise the issue again, because there's a long-standing issue with speeding through the village, and with, you know, several new households, possibly with children, probably with children, and there's 20-mile-per-hour zone possibly coming in as well. It's a sort of stretch of road where irresponsible drivers do choose to overtake because it's broad and straight, and I'm just a bit concerned really that if we don't introduce some sort of traffic calming measures at this juncture, then there might be an accident. But I understand all the points you make, and I'm sure Mike Clogg would have his views as well. But if there's any possibility that we could consider some traffic calming measures, that would be appreciated by everybody who lives locally.
Thank you, Councillor Sard. I mean, there's always the option that the local community could choose to borrow speed cameras and so on to gain evidence if needs be about speeding.
Yeah, they've done that.
Would
To
lend
be fair to them, they have done that over the years. They've got lots of data. There is a problem there, but yeah, it's just what to do about it, really.
Okay, Councillor Champion, you have your hand up.
Yes, I do. You say about the footpath being extended, but looking on Google Maps, the stable property, the house, has a hedge up to the road. So how's the footpath going to be extended? Are you going to accommodate some of their land?
My understanding is that the council has control of the verge at the front. So if you bear with me a moment, I'll try and get up my screen, which will show the extent of the adopted highway. Sorry, without assist, if it might take me just 30 seconds to get it up.
Okay, while you're doing that, I would second Karen Stellard's plea for something to some form of traffic calming. You know, it's going to be 20 miles an hour soon, isn't it? Next September. And if you put in a flat, well, by the time when it's built, it probably will be then. So the flashing sign will say 20. So yeah, I just think something ought to be done. Either you can, in some places you have the road narrowing, you're coming into a settlement, you know, have a giveaway.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, so I did put it on screen for a little while then, hopefully that was long enough. It showed, yeah, the land in front of the stables is adopted highway, so there is the control over that land to implement the pavement. I think the vehicle activated signage is a form of traffic calming, so that is something. It may not be kind of as I won't say as robust, but it's not maybe as potentially as much of a deterrent as a camera, but it is still an improvement where actually the highways engineers can't identify that this development worsens the situation. So that in itself is a positive. Our highways colleagues don't deem that actual, you know, a bottleneck, a narrowing is necessary here. I spoke to the highways engineer earlier, specifically in respect of the 20-mile-an-hour issue. He said, yeah, it can't be confirmed definitively that it will definitely come in, but even if the 20-mile-an-hour limit does come in, he can't identify any reason why that would make a material difference to his assessment of kind of the safety of the junction and the wider implications of having this development here. So it's that.
Yeah,
that's not
he's
considered.
assessing whether, having a junction onto this road is going to make it even worse, which is what he has to do on this application. But this is an opportunity when you're actually having a development to get something done.
Yeah,
That's all I'll say.
I've indicated to Councillor Stallard that I'm happy to have conversations with Mike Clogg in Highways and Councillor Stallard and the Community Council about traffic calming and speed issues, and that's not to anything I said is not to dismiss those issues or say they're not existing, but it's the kind of the difficulty of justifying something in accordance with the tests that we have to measure our conditions against, which are that it's necessary to make this development acceptable in planning terms. I'm certainly happy to have a conversation going forward with our highway section, but those are highways findings in respect to this proposal specifically.
Anyone else got any questions, any queries, any points of clarification? See, Councillor Perry, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, hiya. I was just wondering, there doesn't seem to be any mention of the shared surface again. It seems that with all the sort of affordable housing that's coming forward at the moment has these shared surfaces, but no explanation as to how they're going to work for certain people with protected characteristics.
Again, the highways engineers have assessed this layout and they're happy with it. So it's shared services. It's not one size fits all. They're typically more acceptable on smaller developments where vehicle numbers and traffic speeds are low. So they've assessed this layout and the shared surface in the context of this size and type of proposal. We favour them in many situations because they're generally a kind of a less engineered form of layout, and particularly in kind of rural or semi-rural context, that can be more appropriate than something that looks very engineered with 2-metre footways wrapped around turning heads. And I think this is the kind of situation, the kind of site and kind of context where we probably would favour something a bit more low key. There's good reason to support this kind of approach and the impact it has on how vehicle drivers treat the highway and how pedestrians treat it. And when you have segregation, drivers tend to treat the space differently. You don't expect to encounter pedestrians. You drive like you won't see anyone in the road. So that's why it's proposed here, and that will have been fundamental to the highways engineer's assessment of the application.
Yeah, I think I'll echo.
Through the chair, please, Ian.
Yeah, Chair, and I mean, thank you for that answer. Yeah, I mean, I think I echo what people have said before, Chair, as regards to perhaps improving the main road through with maybe a footway there as well, and traffic calming measures, perhaps.
Yeah, there is a footway required by condition, and there is traffic calming required by condition as well. It's just not the specific type of traffic calming that some of the representations have requested.
Councillor Hodges. You're muted, Nick. Nope, still can't hear you.
Hear me now?
Yes.
There we are. I've unplugged my headphones. There you go. Different point altogether. The piece of playground, basically the public open space within the site, which is obviously welcome. I see the conditioning within the application that says about planting and landscaping and everything like that, which is obviously fine. I was just wondering who would be responsible for the continuing upkeep of it.
It will either be the council or an appointed management company. So there's a condition 13 in the in the recommendation says no development to take place until provisions of details of play and details of the maintenance of the space. So the details that are submitted to deal with that condition would need to include the provision of how it's going to be maintained. Now, if the developer wants it to be maintained by the council, they'd have to pay commuted sums. It's an ongoing issue, and it's a bit of a bugbear of ours how many sites are held on to by management companies, and we do see many instances of management companies not maintaining the land proactively in as high a standard way as you'd want, and we do have enforcement powers to try and deal with that, where they're not, for example, where they put out in their maintenance plan that they submitted under the condition, they a regime of cutting and a regime of maintenance, and if they're not doing it that frequently, then we can potentially enforce. It's not the easiest thing to monitor. You have to try and establish how often they're going out, and it's something that there has been a dialogue with Welsh Government about, and in an ideal world we would see more coming across to us. I think typically the housing associations, think I'm right in saying, have generally been transferring more to us than in the case of private developers. That's not to say it will necessarily happen here, but we would like it to see that happen more often. I'd agree with Councillor Hodges. If that's the point he was making.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you for that. Can I just say I always say that I'd rather have control ourselves as a council than management companies. They are a pain, and we've seen many examples of that recently in Barry, and I just don't want it in the rest of the Vale. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hodges. Right. Hang on, Councillor Perry, I see your hand up. Oh, you've got a thumb up. I thought it was a hand up. We have a kind of a motion and seconder in terms of traffic provision. Councillor Stallard and Councillor Champion rather kind of made a motion, but I'm unclear as to what it says. May I suggest that we include within our recommendation something to the effect of a request to highways to look again at possible traffic calming, to include the idea of maybe a narrowing, as we see elsewhere in the council, or some form of camera to help slowing down traffic in this area where there has historically been quite a lot of speeding. So would that be acceptable?
Can I just check, Chair? Are we suggesting that this is a conversation that we have with highways after the event, rather than this being part of the decision?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm suggesting this is the recommendation that we have this conversation with highways, but that we accept the officer's recommendations with this recommendation as well. Does this fit with Councillor Stallard and Councillor Champion's view of what should be happening? Councillor Stallard, I see your thumb up. Councillor Champion, you're nodding.
Yeah. Would that be just an extra condition to the approval then, or how's that going to work?
I mean, there's a condition at the moment which does require a form of traffic calming, which is the vehicle activated signs, which is condition, it's either 10, 11 or 12. The difficulty with amending a condition now to require something different is that that's above and beyond and contrary to what the highways engineers have said. So in our view wouldn't be justified, but there is a condition requiring that traffic calming and for it to go in before occupation of the development.
Can we ask, it's a condition 11 it is, can we beef this up a bit then?
I don't know how it would be beefed up other than to require something fundamentally different, like an average speed camera. But I personally wouldn't feel comfortable making that change, because I don't know what the implications are of that, or what the if there are processes that need to be gone through in order to kind of agree the appropriate location of a vehicle an average speed camera. So I don't think it's necessarily a simple case of flipping one out from the other, notwithstanding the kind of the merit of it and the rationale for requiring it to be provided by this development. So I don't think I'd be particularly comfortable doing that. I personally think the condition as is what the engineers have requested. It actually probably does go above and beyond washing the face of the development, because the junction and the visibility displays have been designed based on actual vehicle speeds, not based on 30 miles an hour. So the vehicle speeds have been monitored. I think it was knocking on for 40 was the average, and the visibility displays at the junction have been designed to take account of those speeds. So you might argue that the vehicle activated signage is going slightly beyond what would be needed to make this development acceptable in planning terms, but nevertheless it's something which I think has been agreed to, and we see as because of almost a compromise in terms of, you know, betterment and traffic calming. So I personally, I think it would be just difficult to justify changing that, particularly in the absence of the engineers saying it's necessary.
Right, we have two hands up, and then I propose we go to a decision. Councillor Champion, you have your hand up, and then Councillor Perks.
I just wonder if there's any value in deferring this for a month to give highways a chance to reconsider.
And Councillor Perks.
Sorry, I just wondered whether we could move to officer's recommendation, but a caveat rather than a recommendation that the local councillors actually liaise with highways to relook at this. You know, so it isn't part of the recommendations, but it is that it isn't this the planning isn't subject to the highways caveat that we put forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
That the councillors still talk to the highways to see what can be done to try and, you know, sort of allay fears there about the road and stuff like that. But the actual application is not determined by what happens in that conversation that they have with the traffic. The road highways. That's the word I'm looking for. Highways officers.
Yeah, I can see I can see Ian Robinson's point about when this development is finally built, it's going to take a while. The 20 mile an hour limit nationally will be in, as will this new signage with the VAS to herald 20 mile an hour through this particular part of the village. Hopefully that would have the desired effect of slowing traffic down. Any further breaches then become a matter for the police and for investigation by to see if continued speeding is going on there. And I can see why people living in the area would be worried, given the profile of that road, and it may well be that action will need to be taken then. However, it maybe doesn't need to be to impact upon this application as it stands at this time. We have a motion for officers' recommendations. Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Birch, you'll take that as a second, yeah?
Yes, please.
Thank you. In that case, given the discussion that's been had and what is going to be coming out in the future, we are voting now on officers' recommendations as they stand in the report. Councillor Perry, we're at the point of voting now. Is this?
Yeah, one bit of clarification. That street's not lit, is it? Therefore, it won't be 20. It will remain as it is now. Only lit streets are going down to 20.
I believe that when we looked at the thing the other day, that was included, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, but that's what we saw as a draft map, and there's a lot of errors. My entire ward has got errors throughout the whole thing. So everything you saw in my ward will not be happening because there's so many mistakes on that map at the moment. And I just had a quick look on Street View. I don't see any street lights. Unless there's street lights, that speed limit isn't going to come down to 20.
Can anybody clarify on this? Does anybody know?
I can't clarify on that. The only point I would make on that relative to this planning application is I had a conversation with the highways engineer about the issue of 20 miles an hour. His view was the acceptability of the scheme and the appropriateness of the conditions are not affected by whether it changes to 20 or not. So he stands by the conditions and the recommendation, whether it's a 30 mile an hour limit or a 20 mile an hour limit.
Well, yeah. Can you clarify though, after the meeting, if you can raise that as a matter for highways, please. In that case, given that, Ian, can you put your hand down? Given that, are there anybody opposed to officers' recommendations? Ian, is that hand up an opposition to officers' recommendations?
Yeah, I think we should go for a vote.
Want to go for a vote? Right. In that case, Mark, can you please do the roll call for a vote?
Yes, of course, Chair. Bear with me a second. Okay. Obviously, we'll go through the membership alphabetically. First, we have Councillor Birch.
For officers' recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Birch. Then we have Councillor Bruce.
Can you please clarify what I'm actually voting on?
We're voting on officers' recommendations as they stand.
What are they?
Approving the development.
With the recommendations that Caris wanted?
Not with those, no.
Against them.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Bruce. Councillor Cave.
For officers' recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Cave. Councillor Champion.
For.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Champion. Councillor Cobb.
For.
Lovely, thank you very much. Councillor Drake.
For officers' recommendations.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Drake. Councillor Ernest.
For the recommendation.
Lovely, thank you very much, Councillor. And I believe Councillor Gilligan has given her apologies, so I'll go on to Councillor Hodges.
For.
Lovely, thank you very much, Councillor. I believe as well, Councillor Johnson hasn't joined us. I'll just double check. Are you there, Councillor Johnson? Right, I'll take that as a no. So I'll go on to Councillor Payne.
For officers' recommendations.
Lovely, thank you very much, Councillor. I'll go then next to Councillor Perks.
For officers' recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Perry.
Against.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Stallard.
Obliged. For.
Lovely, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Thomas.
For.
Okay. Councillor Williams.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm unable to vote because I've missed the first part of the meeting, but I would have voted for, so
thank you, Eddie.
I can't commit my vote now.
Okay, thanks for clarifying, Councillor Williams. We won't include that, obviously. And Councillor Wilson.
For officers' recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much. Just to confirm, Chair, the majority of members have voted for. We have 2 against.
Yeah, I make it 12-2.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Moving on then. Planning application 2021-01710 full, former Eastbrook Methodist Chapel, Chapel Road, Eastbrook, Dinas Powys. There are 3 speakers that we have that are registered, saying they want to speak on this matter. And I believe was this in late reps as well?
It wasn't, Chair, no.
No, it was another one, was it? Right. In that case, I think we've got Stephen. I think this is one for you.
That's correct. Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Hopefully you can all see my screen. So the application site, as edged in red, relates to a vacant chapel which was known as Eastbrook Methodist Church and associated land. The chapel itself is at the end of Chapel Row, which is accessed off Cardiff Road in the settlement of Dinas, virtually opposite Eastbrook Station. So just zooming out, At the moment, there's a existing chapel building which is of tin construction. The proposal seeks to demolish this building, which is vacant, and replace it with a new dormer-style bungalow. So the building itself, the replacement building, is approximately 8.7 metres wide by a depth of 9.5 metres, with a 6-metre ridge height and an eaves height of 2.8 metres. As you can see from the plans, roof 3 dormers are shown on the front elevation. Materials and finishes comprise of rendered section panels with red brick detailing. There's not an awful lot to say on this, just in terms of the floor plan again. So it is actually, even though it looks quite small, it is a 4-bedroom dwelling. We've got provision of amenity space at the back, which comprises of a patio area and then a slightly higher level of garden. To the front, there's a lawned and a gravelled area, and the dwelling will be served by 2 parking spaces, and there's also provision of bin storage. So just quickly, just perhaps to have a little closer look at some of the photos. That's the existing building that currently stands. As I said previously, it is vacant, and I think it's been vacant and was sold off in sort of spring of 2018. So this is the view down the road. It's quite a limited street scene. So as you come in from Cardiff Road, you've got these row of 4 cottages on the right-hand side, and then you've got Chapel Close, which is a 1960s, 70s development, and the houses either side of that. The chapel currently pretty much occupies most of the site. So this is the boundary with the dwelling to the west of Oakley. As you can, this is the rear boundary, which fronts several gardens in Chapel Close. As you can see, lots of these properties have kind of modified and changed their boundaries over time. And that's the boundary with the house to the east, which is 25 Chapel Close. And this is the view of the existing chapel. You can just see the roof from the road to the front of 25 Chapel Close. So, say officers have considered the loss of the existing chapel building. There's quite a detailed section in the report that goes into that. We are satisfied that Dinas Powys wouldn't be deficient in terms of community facility floor space. Aside from that, in terms of the general form and scale and massing of the replacement building, it does to some degree follow the pitch roof nature of the existing, and let's say being pretty much single story with dormers is relatively low impact. So highways are happy with it from a access and a parking perspective. Also, it's acceptable from an ecology point of view. In addition to that, the applicant has also agreed to pay a financial contribution towards off-site affordable housing. That's the summary, Chairman. Happy to pass back to you and answer any questions. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Stephen. Right. Before we do that, we'll move on to our speakers, I think. First speaker is Debbie Evans, who is a community councillor, but she's speaking in her own right this evening. Debbie, if you can come on. If you can take down the pictures, Stephen, please. Right, Debbie, you have 3 minutes to speak from the moment you start speaking. With 1 minute to go, Mark will tell you that, and we do adhere quite strictly to the 3-minute rule. So when you're ready, Debbie.
Okay, thank you. The chapel was the only community space in Eastbrook. Parties were held there and it was used by Brownies, Rainbows and Nursery until the Methodist Church closed its doors. It has subsequently deteriorated through lack of use and investment. The applicant had previously applied for planning permission, and this was refused by the Vale and at appeal, as it wasn't proven that there was still a need for this in the community. Has this now been proven? On the previous application, there were no plans to change the look of the building or the size or the orientation. I object to this application on the following grounds. overdevelopment of site, incorrect boundary lines, which I've spoken to the planning department about. There are no accurate measurements on the submitted plans, giving a false impression of the area, inconsistencies in the application. It mentions no higher than the original chapel, then no higher than the surrounding houses. This has a huge impact on neighbouring properties, whose gardens will look an extremely large expansive roof, as the orientation has also been changed. The proximity from the proposed dormer bungalow to the boundaries of the neighbouring properties, due to the inaccurate boundary line on the plan, is roughly 4 metres. There's a lack of amenity space, not enough parking spaces for the number of bedrooms, and there are no 4-bedroom dormer bungalows in the close, and it is out of keeping within the area. The footprint of the proposed dwelling is small, as stated in the application. There is no way they could achieve what they want to achieve using the existing footprint and existing roof height. This is to the detriment of the neighbouring properties and could have financial implications for them. I know people don't have a right to light or a view, but surely they have a right to the continued enjoyment of the properties they have had for nearly 60 years. There are alternatives and compromises to this application. Firstly, this is a sensitive site where the chapel has stood there for over 120 years. The close was named after this chapel. Allow the demolition of this chapel with a condition applied that the new property has to recreate the look of the chapel on the outside. We have all seen grand designs and what could be achieved by someone who cares and has imagination and vision. This application clearly shows none of these and no consideration to neighbours. Secondly, should the committee grant this application, I wish you to consider reducing the number of bedrooms from 4 to 2 and putting a height restriction on the roof line so it can be no higher than the original chapel. Thank you.
Thank you. If you just stay on for a few moments, Debbie, to see if there are any points of clarification any members of the committee would like to raise. Councillor Champion, I see your hand up. This is a point of clarification.
Yes. She mentioned that it had been refused. Was that an application that had been refused?
Yes, it was. An application was submitted by the applicant to convert it into offices with no change to the existing chapel or the layout. This was refused by the Vale and then subsequently refused at appeal because it hadn't been proven that there was not a need for this facility within the community. Now, I know it said that there were lots of facilities within Dinas Powys, but if you look at the application, there's places in Cogan that have been put on there which aren't Dinas Powys, and everything facility-wise seems to be centred around the village.
Right, Councillor Payne, you have your hand up. Is this a point of clarification?
Yeah, sure. I just wanted to clarify the actual difference in roof height between the chapel and the development, please, Stephen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 1.4 metres higher.
Thank you. Councillor Cabb, I apologise. Your hand up was up before Helen Payne's. I missed that. Is this a point of clarification?
No worries. Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to check, and perhaps Debbie could confirm, when the parking, the drive, would that be on the right-hand bend? As you come up Chapel Road, there's a 90-degree turn.
Yes.
So because the cars would be one after the other, so they will either have to reverse in or reverse out.
They would have to reverse in front of Oakley, the neighbour's property.
Right. Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Right. I see no other hands up for points of clarification. We'll move on to our next speaker then, who is Councillor Franks, who is a local member as well, but not a member of this committee.
Okay, thank you very much. Members will have already heard that this chapel is the only community space in Eastbrook, and I think it's worth pointing out that the building has gone downhill over the recent past due to lack of use and maintenance. Now, it's most important to remember that a previous application was indeed refused and on appeal on the grounds of lack of community use in this area of Dinas Powys. I, for instance, cannot hold a surgery in this part of Dinas Powys. There is no there is no public building that's available. I do struggle to understand how a few years ago the planning officers were able to recommend not approval on the grounds of lack of community facilities. Since then, we've had 300 extra houses and obviously hundreds of extra people, but now apparently there is adequate public space. Some of the buildings that have been mentioned are so far away, it's ridiculous to include in the calculation. The rugby club in the far west, the tennis club in the far west, and the clues in the name, Eastbrook, is in the east. And in fact, the community centre at Murchfield is so busy, so congested, that a recently opened soup club lunch had to be fitted in a 1 hour slot, because that's all that was available in that building. So there is a great need for community facilities in Dinas Powys, and I can't understand how the officers can change their stance from a few years ago to now, when we've got these hundreds and hundreds of extra houses. You've heard about car parking. It's a cul-de-sac off a cul-de-sac. 4 bedrooms probably mean 4 cars, and it's going to cause a great deal of congestion in that area. I consider this as an ungainly development and should be rejected. Thank you, Chair and Committee.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. We have one other speaker on this. Oh, sorry, I apologise. Has anybody got any points of clarification for Councillor Franks? I see no hands. Moving on then, the third speaker on this matter is agent for the planning, who is Andrew Ailes. Are you there, Mr. Ailes? There you are, I see you.
I am, Chair.
Same rule applies to you as applied to Councillor Franks and Debbie Evans, and in that you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. My name's Andrew Ailes. I'm Director at AJ Planning. I'm a Chartered Town Planner and I'm representing the applicant at today's committee. Firstly, I'd like to thank Stephen Butler for his professional recommendation to grant conditional full planning permission for my client's small-scale residential proposal. In review of the application plans and supporting visuals that my client has provided, we will note that the proposed bungalow is an attractive design in keeping with the street scene. The footprint is of modest scale. In fact, it's a smaller footprint than the chapel that's accommodated on the plot at the moment. The building height has been kept to a minimum. It doesn't exceed the ridge line of number 25 Chapel Close, which reflects my client's respectful outlook on building height, rather than proposing a 2-storey house, for example. The application is served by an established access. As Stephen's pointed out, the access point serves the chapel and Oakley. It's not within the main area of the close. It's quite a wide access point, as you'll have seen on site. In planning policy terms, we're talking about previously developed lands. In the development plan, we're not in a conservation area. The chapel building has no afforded listed building status. Looking at Stephen's report, page 86, it's positive to note that Dinas Powys Community Council raised no objection. The council's own drainage, ecology and highways engineers raised no objection in recognising with the highways officer that we've met the parking provisions as per the development plan. I note that my client, having submitted the application a year ago, in 1 week's time, has submitted a raft of supporting information. Personally, we carried out a community consultation, sending out 36 neighbour consultation letters. This wasn't a statutory consultation, it was voluntary, again reflecting my client's positive stance in terms of informing people of the proposals. They were given the opportunity to provide design feedback and also comment on what they thought of existing community facilities. Heritage consultation. Now, during the course of the application, we were asked regarding heritage matters. So my client engaged a highly experienced and respected heritage consultant who provided a heritage assessment report. This was due to a local resident trying to get the building listed with CADU. Back in, I think it was 2009, a similar attempt was rejected. As per Stephen's report, CADU have commented with no objection, noting that whilst tin tabernacles do have a rarity value, the majority...
Sorry, Mr. Ailes, your time is up. Your 3 minutes is up, I'm afraid. Sorry, Chair, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Councillor, before we move on to points of clarification, Councillor Franks, could you take yourself off camera and mute?
Sorry.
And Councillor Champion, I take it this is a point of clarification?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, if there are any other points of clarification, please put your hands up.
You say that it's not 2 stories, but it is basically, isn't it?
Excuse me, Chair.
Ailes, Andrew Ailes, yes, I mean, you can reply to that if you wish.
I was advised I had 6 minutes to speak.
No, 3.
No, it's 3. It was on
3.
the email, Mr. House.
Yeah. I apologise. It is 3.
Yeah,
I did make that clear right at the start when I was talking to speakers.
Can Andrew Ailes please respond to my question of clarification?
It's a proposed dormer bungalow
with 2 stories.
It's a dormer bungalow with dormer windows, with accommodation on the ground floor and first floor level. It's not a dwelling house as such. 2 stories. It's a dormer bungalow.
I can understand your point, Councillor Champion. I think it's a moot point. It is a matter of semantics. Councillor Wilson, you have your hand up next.
Thank you very much. I just want to ask a question of Andrew as well. Thank you very much for your presentation, Andrew. I just want to go through this ridge line. You mentioned that the ridge lines are the same height of a neighbouring property. Yeah, I know that one of the other people said that actually you increased the height of this building. So obviously with the ridge line, it's quite an important matter to consider for us at the planning committee. So with this, are you sure that it won't go any higher than that? Okay, and in terms of the construction, it won't be too high afterwards, because often when you construct, these properties, often, it goes a lot higher in terms during the construction phase.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Looking at the plans, the building would measure 6 metres to the ridge line, with reference to the elevation drawings. Number 25, which is shown illustratively, is a taller dwelling, and that is the immediate neighbour.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Perks, you have your hand up. I hope if this is a point of clarification.
Yes, I just wondered if Andrew could clarify whether it's the dormer bungalow, the windows are just front facing, there isn't a dormer on the back overlooking the other garden. Also, whether there's the parking space that's available there, that will be in the final plans.
Thank you for your question. As per the visuals and the elevations, there's 3 small dormers set down from the ridge line on the front elevation, and as per the rear elevation, there isn't a dormer to the rear. And the parking areas are 2 parking spaces measuring 4.8 by 2.6 to meet the Council's highways guidance, and that was confirmed at application stage, Councillor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Isles. And finally, Councillor Cowpe, you have your hand up as well. Is this a point of clarification?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Chair. Andrew said that they'd sent out 36 letters. Did you get any replies?
Thank you for your question, Councillor. We did indeed. So I've got the community facilities report. 36 letters were sent out, that's correct. There was 4 letters of response received. There was general information provided and some historic information. So I will summarise as per the community facilities report. So one resident commented that Eastbrook didn't have community facilities and that during its operation the chapel was well attended, including preschool, celebrations, brownies. 2 residents confirmed that historically they'd attended Sunday school and christenings at the chapel, one noting there was a good provision of community facilities, including places of worship within the area. One respondent, so the last comment that I can feed back, in summary, one respondent stated, we used to use the chapel regularly when it was used for a preschool nursery, which was very popular with local families. However, this closed approximately 25 years ago when the Vale of Glamorgan Council opened a nursery unit at the infant school, and nothing, to our knowledge, was ever held at the chapel other than the odd birthday party and Sunday services. And we believe that Dinas Powys has plenty of facilities for the community and places of worship. Again, the decision to close the chapel was due to dwindling congregation, which has also led to the recent closure of the church further up Cardiff Road, and I believe it's Landau Baptist Church, I think it was called.
I think this is becoming now less relevant to the application, but we take your point, Mr. Ailes.
So sorry, Councillor, I was simply reporting back on the question. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a bit more than we needed. Right, Councillor Cowpe, is this another point of clarification?
Yes, if I'm allowed.
Or do you want to move to the debate? And I can invite you to speak.
I'd like to ask one more point of clarification, if that's acceptable, Chair.
Yes, certainly. Yeah.
It's been mentioned number 25, which is the nearest house, but I think number 4 also joins that boundary, and that plot hasn't been mentioned at all, as in whether it would be overlooked or affected.
Thank you, Councillor. Number 4, Oakley, is my client's property.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right. If there being no other points of clarification that I can seek, Councillor, Mr. Isles, I'm elevating or delegating you. Mr. Isles, you're free to go or to go off camera and go and switch off your mic, please. We'll move to the general debate. Marianne, you're the local member. Do you want to speak to this before we go to everybody else?
Yes, please, Chair. Thank you. I am concerned about this development where it is on the road and the parking in and out there, because it is sort of on the corner. Completely understand that if number 4 is owned by this person, then that's why it wasn't mentioned. But 2 other things I think that haven't been mentioned really is the access out of there onto Cardiff Road is a blind bend. It's blind when you come out onto Cardiff Road. And the waste disposal vehicles have difficulty already getting down that road. And I don't know if the emergency services, any more cars on that road would cause a problem, because it is a little cul-de-sac. And indeed, I echo Councillor Frank's comments and Debbie Evans's comments that there is no community facility in that part of Dinas Powys at all. There is nothing. And if you know the road, it's quite a long road, Cardiff Road, very busy, a lot of fumes. If you were walking toddlers up and down there, yeah, it's not a pleasant experience. Thank you. So I just think those things should be taken into consideration.
Okay, thank you, Marianne. Right, Stephen, do you want to respond now
Yes,
to
yeah.
the three speakers and to Councillor Cowp?
I will indeed. I think that the main issues that seem to be emerging here again is the loss of the community facility. So, as has been stated, we did previously refuse an application on the loss of community facility, but it's important to note there were specific reasons for that. One is that effectively no evidence was really submitted at the time in respect of firstly marketing of the community facility as to whether or not it was surplus to requirements, and secondly an assessment in respect of whether there was the level of provision in the area. So I think that's really what's triggered the new application has come in and has been supported by an assessment on the facilities within Dinas Powys. So when we previously dealt with the previous application that was refused, we looked at the background paper, which is the most relevant up-to-date data, which is backed in 2013. So obviously that is quite old, and as the report says, predated all of the new housing allocations that have been delivered in Dinas Powys since that time. So rather than relying on that, our policy team have done an updated assessment factoring in all of those allocations and the community, the need per dwelling for those built out, including windfall sites as well. And what we've done now, and we've kind of followed, we've used the methodology of the background paper, but what we've done is followed the arguments put forward by the applicant and the agent, and certainly there's some concern that certain facilities have been included. I can assure you we've done a very tight assessment of Dinas Powys itself, and we have discounted where other community facilities have been referenced that are outside let's call it the settlement of Dinas. They've been discounted. So we've gone through all of the figures. It's important to note as well that the previous background paper excluded a number of quite critical community facilities. So it was inaccurate in itself and is also out of date in terms of time and the number of dwellings. So we brought everything up to date, we've reassessed it, and we've done it looking at the settlement because rather than doing it by the wider ward on the basis of because Dinas Powys does have a number of community facilities, and what we're looking at are sustainable community facilities that are walkable. I know Councillor Franks made reference to the rugby club and the tennis club, which is sort of towards the west, but nevertheless, if this site were to be lost, there are 5 or 6 quite central community facilities, being the Parish Hall, Lee Hall, the Hall at St Peter's Church, St Mary Church, Bethesda, and also the Merch Community Centre as well, all of which we feel are within reasonable walking distance, 10-15 minutes of the centre of Dinas. So I know this is probably the only facility in the eastern part, but it's because probably Dinas has got so many facilities, we're starting to look at a very sort of micro level of where these facilities are. But with the loss of this facility, we think that the residents of Dinas Powys would still have acceptable provision of community facilities, both north and south parts of Dinas Powys. I say the report does go through that, and it does go through it in significant detail, whereas often reports we look at the background paper. We've brought, as I said before, we've brought everything up to date. So we really are satisfied that the loss of this facility wouldn't result in a deficiency based on the current, and in fact the projected windfall in the settlement as well. Just another thing to mention is that just slightly moving on to just on the community facility as well is we are dealing with an application here to redevelop the site. What we can't do is force that building to be brought back into a community use, and I think has been mentioned by a number of speakers that the building has been not left to ruin, but is in a poor state, and whether or not it could ever be brought back to a feasible community use is possibly questionable. So just on the other matters in relation to Councillor Cowp, has raised some concern about parking and access issues. If I just share my desktop, hopefully you can see that. So this is Cardiff Road, and this is the access from Cardiff Road, Eastbrook Station opposite into the Close, Chapel Row. So it is, I'm not disputing it is a relatively restricted road width with a footway on the one side. But say the highway engineer, not only looking at the site, looks at the acceptability of the impact of the proposal and safety on the highway network. From his point of view and from our point of view, this is an adopted highway and the public have a right to pass and repass it. And I think you could certainly argue that when this facility was in use, that you would have had a significant number of people that would have been using it, possibly driving up and parking around these roads. Therefore, by redeveloping it for a 4-bed unit, arguably you would have less traffic and possibly less conflict of movements. Again, members may note that the footway finishes here and the sort of bound surface finishes here. This is actually the end of the adopted highway. So this is effectively private land that runs into Oakley to the rear and also serves the frontage of the chapel. So in terms of any concerns about reversing out, yes, there's not space to reverse on the highway, but they would be reversing out onto what is effectively private land, almost shared driveway. So again, this is a no-through road. So in terms of risk and impacts on any other vehicles passing, the only other people passing would be going to Oakley, which, as we've heard from the agent, is actually, is the property, is the owner of this site. So again, highways haven't raised any concern in respect of that. With parking standards, yes, it is a 4-bed dwelling and 2 spaces are shown. From a parking standards point of view, they could be providing 3 spaces, but what we can't forget is that we're very, very close to Eastbrook Station. Within, I would say probably a minute's walk, you could get to Eastbrook Station. So the fact that it's technically 1 space below the maximum standards is something we are more than happy to accept in this instance. Just on the other matters raised about waste disposal, again, highways do look at refuse vehicles, particularly on larger sites. No concern has been raised in respect of that. I suspect that when bins are put out, that the refuse vehicle turns up this road and probably the operatives drag the bins down from up here without the need of having to go to the end of that road. Similarly with emergency vehicles, in an emergency, there is clearly space to drive up here. The road is wide enough for larger vehicles if the need arises. Again, there is an existing house here, and if anything, obviously this new property is going to be closer to the highway and the footway than the existing house. So again, from just a general highways perspective and an access point of view, no objections have been raised. Happy to take any more questions, Chairman.
Thank you, Stephen. Next hand up is Rhiannon, followed by Charles Champion.
Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to pick up on a couple of points that Stephen's already raised, and that's the chapel closed through lack of support. It's not currently in use. It's vacant. I don't know whether they think the ferries are going to reopen and start holding community events there, but it's not happening. This is a site that is not being used for its previous purpose. And if we simply say no to the application, it will fall into disrepair. And then people will be complaining about that, and they will be looking to have anything built there rather than the eyesore that it will probably become through lack of maintenance. So, I'm always sorry to see these facilities fall out of use, but the fact is that it was not being used, therefore that was why it closed. And I think we have to be realistic about this. Thank you.
Councillor Champion.
Can I respond to that last comment? Because it was a church that closed because of probably lack of congregation, and it was probably being used by other people because it was open. I would suggest that it's overdevelopment. Obviously, the planning officer believes it's not, but I think 4 bedrooms on that small site is really overdevelopment.
Thanks for the comment. Councillor Cowpe.
The same point that Councillor Champion made. When a church closes, it's not open, and therefore it's not obviously available for people to use the space. So there was probably still a need for that facility at the time, but the church closed for whatever reason. Just a point of clarification, Stephen, the height of this new building is definitely going to be not as high as number 25, you're saying?
That's correct. If I could share the drawing that I shared when Mr. Ailes was discussing the application. So, I mean, there's no reason why it should be, because this is, let's call it a dormer, as has been said, dormer bungalow. 25 is a full 2-story dwelling, and it's significantly less than that. And I would have to say, in terms of impacts, etc., we wouldn't actually support it being any higher because of the sort of proximity to houses at the back. So the fact that the neighbours at the back really pretty much overlook predominantly just the roof of it, rather than it being a 2-story elevation, is something that is necessary. I mean, it is a relatively constrained site. I can't get around that fact. But in terms of the, there has been discussion about it being overdevelopment, but nevertheless, in terms of the amenity space, it does all stack up. We haven't even relaxed the amenity space on this one. We've looked at the calculations. It is a 4-bed dwelling, but again, there's reasonable sized garden, and certainly in terms of new developments, this would be no worse. Just on the parking issue as well. So you mentioned about access and people parking on the site. This is going to have much less parking requirement than the former use as a church stroke community use. I mean, and that's to some degree that's the benefit of just providing 2 spaces, because you're not encouraging car use. We want to sort of head towards more sustainable uses. So by only putting two car spaces in there, the occupiers have got certainty that yes, they could park 2 cars, but no more. So by reducing that provision, we're trying to force people out of their cars to more alternative modes.
Thank you, Chair. May I come back with another point of clarification?
No, it's not clarification now, it's a matter of debate.
Well, right,
yes,
okay.
Yes, you can.
I'm surprised at the pictures you showed, because I've been up and down that road at various times of day, and it's very rarely that quiet. And, once people start coming home from work in the evening, that road is packed. So I don't know what time those pictures were taken.
Sorry, just to come back, this photo was obviously taken in work time because an officer took the photo.
Yes.
So, I mean, I'm not saying, obviously that's outside 5-6 o'clock, when obviously a lot of people come back from work, but then equally a lot of people are working from home. So perhaps the number of cars parked on roads and in driveways is probably higher than historically it would have been. Again, if you just look at Google Streets, again, I assume this is taken in the daytime, and there are 1 or 2 cars. So, from that evidence, it would appear to be very, very likely parked in terms of on-street parking. We can only look at the evidence in front of us.
All right. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just want to make a few comments, really, and also to move officers' recommendations as well. Couple points. First of all, of course, I'm surprised that the community council didn't make any comment against this, because it's a loss of community facility. I would have thought there'd be an opportunity during that time for the community council either to purchase the site or to negotiate with the church to look into that. And it doesn't seem to be on this debate today. And I know we've got some very well-known community councillors here that hasn't been done. In fact, they make no comment, and that to me means that really the community council, I'm not saying I'm for it, but certainly they're not against it in terms of the application. That's one point. Secondly, if you look at this site, it's a relatively quiet site, it seems to me, and although there may be some cars in Eden, and I'm sure there is, it's in some way we're only having one property there, and only admittedly a 4-bedroom property, you're not going to have huge amounts of volume of people going into and through, which you could do if it became a community centre or even back as a chapel. That's the second point. And thirdly, I think Ian's made a good point now about, Stephen's made a really good point about the fact its proximity to Eastbrook Station is very near. So I think a lot of people will access it and probably travel to the house along with other houses from the train station. And that's something we need to be welcoming, don't we? Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'd like to move on to recommendations.
Thanks for that. Do we have a seconder? And seconding officers' recommendations, please.
Yeah, I'll second officers' recommendations, Helen.
Thank you, Helen. In that case, we move to I don't know if we need to move to a vote. Do we have people on the committee who are opposed to this?
Yes, I am.
Councillor Cowpe is opposed. Anyone else? Councillor Perry, you seem to be indicating you're opposed. In that case, we'll go to a vote.
Okay, Mark. Chair. Sorry, Chair. As before, we'll go through the list of members alphabetically and indicate whether they're for or against the officers' recommendations. So we start with Councillor Birch.
For officers' recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Councillor Bruce.
For.
Thank you, Councillor Bruce. Councillor Cave.
For.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cave. Councillor Champion.
Against.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Cowpe.
Against.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Drake.
For.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor Drake. Councillor Ernest.
For the application.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Gilligan has given her apologies, so we go on to Councillor Hodges.
Against.
Thank you, Councillor Hodges. We go, Councillor Johnson is not here, so it's on to Councillor Payne.
For officers' recommendation.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor Payne. Councillor Perks.
For officers' recommendation.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor Perks. We'll go on to Councillor Perry.
I'm against the officer recommendations.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor Perry. Councillor Stallard.
Obliged for.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Thomas.
For the officers' recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Williams.
For the record, I can declare I've got no declarations of interest in this, and for the officer's recommendations.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Councillor Williams. And then finally, Councillor Wilson.
For officers' recommendations.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Just total that for chair. So
I'll make that 11-4.
Yeah, 11-4, and we have 4 against.
Okay, thank you very much for that, everyone. Moving on, we come to land adjacent to Oak Court, Myrtle Close, Penarth, 2022-00294, oblique hybrid. We have one speaker on this who is speaking for the applications, the agent. That's Dylan Green. Mr. Green, are you there? Or have you fallen asleep?
Yeah, no, still here.
Right. In that case, same as with everybody else, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, would I introduce it first?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Stephen. Yes, you're quite right. I'm getting ahead of myself again. Yes, Stephen, if you could just introduce the.
Just first thing to note is we've had 2 matters rising notes on this application. One from Mr. Andrew Freegard, who's the operational manager for housing and development, agreeing to the requirement for Section 106 contributions. The second is from Mr. Green himself from Asbury Planning, just to clarifying several matters on the application. So let me just share my screen. I'm probably going to speak. Apologies, I have a cold at the moment, so this is quite a complicated application, so I probably might spend some time going through it, so please bear with me. So the site itself is in Penarth. It's off, it's Myrtle Close, which actually, if I just call up the on its survey map, just to give a bit of context. So if members probably are aware, Redlands Road, you've got Cedar Way, which is kind of an internal distributor road in the sort of 1950s, 60s estate. So off that, you've got Myrtle Close. And then at the end of Myrtle Close, you've got a care home, which is T. Dewi Sant, and you've got Oak Court, which is operated by Wales and West, which is kind of sort of sheltered housing. So the application site is in this broad location. So let's just run, sorry, just call the plans up again. So the application is in two elements. It's a hybrid application. So the first element is it's a full application for 70 extra care flats, which is this sort of square block with a central courtyard. And also the second phase, which is in outline, is a development of 32 flats for people over the age of 55. And that is all matters reserved. So whilst there's an indicative layout presented here, that's just for information, the only matter that's being considered in relation to this outline element is the access. So all of the development is for 100% affordable housing. In terms of a bit of background, the site itself is largely an allocated site. Part of the site, which is this part, falls outside of the allocation. It's allocated in the development plan for 145 units, and this is only part of the larger site which forms that allocation. Just in terms of the share the plans with you. Apologies, a lot of plans. This is the extra care building. So as you can see, zoom in, it's quite a large building with accommodation over several floors. Again, it's a kind of a perimeter building with a central courtyard. Materials and finishes comprise of is quite a mix of brick and cladding materials. What we've worked quite hard with the applicants to, and certainly through the pre-app process, to try and reduce the scale of the building, and it is a very, very large building, but by putting vertical elements in, by having these sort of built-out bays, vertical gable features, it's what that has done is assisted in trying to break down the scale and massing of the building. Again, this is just a closer up view, so you know, these are effectively going to be flats with a sort of like a warden. So from a planning point of view, we're considering them as C3 dwellings. This is a CGI, which is quite useful. It's been presented to us. Again, this shows the scale of the building and shows how it's been split up. Again, this is the view from the internal courtyard. So this is going to be the main private amenity space for the over 55 accommodation. Some photos around the site. It's a slightly funny site where once you travel through Myrtle Close, which is predominantly semi-detached dwellings, you come to a sort of a stop in the road, and then the character changes quite significantly, where you've just got a sort of low-level care home, then you've got the 3-story brick building next door, which this will form operationally. It'll form part of an extension of it. Again, there's photos of the site. I'm sure we'll get into this debate, but there are a number of trees on the site, which the report does look at in quite significant detail. This is the entrance into the site from the bottom of Myrtle Close. The scheme also proposes there's a footpath that connects to the side of Dewi Sant that connects to the Cedar Way. This is proposed to be widened to 3.5, again to provide better access points. a kind of a safer walking route as well. So it'll be a walking cycling route. So and that will connect up to an existing bus stop located on Cedar Way. So the site is actually very well served in terms of public transport. So I just get to the general layout again. Again, the report sets out the height parameters for the, sorry, the plans are so big, it takes time to redraw them. The report sets out the height parameters for the over 55 apartments. So there's sort of walk-up units. These will be these are have more of a scale of sort of 2.5 story dwellings. These walk-up units will be sort of taller, sort of 3, potentially 4. Again, the outline parameter height set out in the application are just the maximum height. So when we deal with the reserve matters application, we will be dealing with all of that detail, the visual impact and the impact on the neighbours. So I'm happy to leave it there for the moment. Again, it is a complicated application, so there's a lot to talk about. I'm happy just to pick up any points as I raised. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Stephen, and I apologise again for missing you out at the beginning. In that case, we can move now to Dylan Green. Again, if you can come back on, and I apologise to you for kicking off too early. You do have 3 minutes from the moment you start speaking.
Okay, thank you, Diolch Cadeirydd. Thank you, Chair and members of the Planning Committee for the opportunity to speak today in support of the hybrid planning application for the extra care development and the over 55s development at Myrtle Close in Penarth. I won't take the full allocated time today in my presentation, as the case officer has already provided a thorough assessment of the development, both within the report and within the presentation. So I'll use this time just to reiterate some of the main points and to highlight the importance of getting the application determined today in line with the officer's positive recommendation. Firstly, the principle of residential development on this site is firmly accepted, given it's part of a larger site allocated for housing within the development plan, and a degree of extra care provision is anticipated as part of this development. The site is proposed to be developed as a 100% affordable housing scheme, and is noted there is significant support for the development of affordable homes at a national and local level. There's a net annual need for 1,205 units of affordable housing per annum within the Vale, and this application will assist in delivering much needed homes within an area identified as having the greatest need. The materials and finishes are considered acceptable in principle and reflect that which is used in the wider area. The scale of development, being set at 3 stories, is also comparable to Oak Court, which is located adjacent to the site. As such, there are no concerns regarding the scale and layout and the overall appearance of the development. The site benefits from being in a sustainable location. It's located approximately 2 kilometres from Penarth town centre and is accessible by active travel modes, such as walking and cycling, as well as public transport. As Stephen mentioned, the development will provide a 3.5 metre wide footway/cycleway link from Cedar Way through the development to the edge of the rest of the allocated housing site. So it does not preclude the remainder of the housing site to come forwards for development. In terms of trees and biodiversity, the application comprises a scheme of translocating existing smaller trees that have been removed and planting them elsewhere in the site, with further replacement planting proposed alongside this. The proposed management of the site will provide a betterment in terms of numbers and quality, as a number of the unmanaged scrub trees would not reach maturity in their current location, and a properly managed tree planting scheme is likely to give the translocated trees a greater chance of maturing. The scheme also provides biodiversity enhancements in respect of landscaping, lighting, reptile mitigation, and the provision of bat and bird boxes. Finally, there are no objections from any statutory consultees to the application presented, subject to the proposed conditions being included on the permission. The development is therefore acceptable, and by approving the development today, it allows Wales and West Housing to claim Welsh Government funding, which has already been allocated for this project, and will allow them to progress to contract stage. Any further delay puts this target for funding at risk. Furthermore, build cost inflation is currently rising by around 3% each quarter, and any further delay puts pressure on the viability of the project. I therefore ask you, as the members of the Planning Committee, to support the officer's recommendation and grant the hybrid planning permission for this development at today's committee. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch, Dylan. Thank you for your brevity. I ask now for points of clarification. Councillor Payne, and then Councillor Burnett. I see you have your hand up as local member.
Can I give way to the local member, please?
No. Points of clarification for Mr. Green first, and then if Liz wants to speak, she can speak as local member after.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to know if there's any provision for ambulance bays to get quite close to the building. That was one of the considerations with extra care facilities. There are a lot of ambulances that go to and from extra care facilities, and that there's always an issue with parking and access.
Yeah, the layout is accounted, so there's not an official designation, but the layout, the parking area has been accounted to for for the facilities of emergency vehicles to be used in terms of tracking and kind of turning heads. So there is sufficient space provided within the parking space for such vehicles to use and to enter the site.
So that would remain solely for emergency vehicles?
Yeah, it's not essentially.
Because that's the consideration.
There's sufficient space for.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the consideration and the clarification would be that it would only be for emergency vehicles.
Yeah, no, that's not a point of clarification, Councillor Payne. The point of clarification was, is there specific provision for emergency vehicles? And I think Mr. Green has said that there isn't. It's within the car parking that is allocated
right,
for
okay,
everything.
thank you.
Yeah.
I have a few points, actually.
You've got another point of clarification.
I have. Is there provision for electric vehicles?
Yeah, there is provision for electrical vehicle charging points in accordance with the national requirement. So I think the bays are shown on the layout plan.
Okay, and just how far is the bus stop to walk to?
There's a bus stop along Cedar Way, which is
how far is it?
I think it's shown on the screen as Stephen's showing there. There's a shelter just on the bottom of Cedar Way. So and that's been improved as part of this application then as well. So it's been enhanced as a facility.
Okay, so do we know how far it is? I can't work it out.
I think Steve's trying to measure.
I'm trying to do two things at once. It's 125 metres to there, so it's probably 100. Well, I would say 200 metres. Oh, I can.
200 metres.
Well, if you're happy to wait a matter of seconds, I can measure it accurately for you.
It's all right. If it's roughly 200 metres, that's fine.
Well, yeah, 250, 200. Yeah, well, it's actually 200. That's 200, so it's certainly within 250.
All right, lovely. Thanks very much, both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Champion, is this a point of clarification for Mr. Dillon, Mr. Green?
Yes, he was just talking about active travel, and I guess in relation to what Helen was talking about, we need to look at inactive travel for these people that are going to be, the elderly people. So can you clarify perhaps anything more on inactive travel?
Yeah, just on that point, thanks. There's community facilities to be provided within the building as well. So as an extra care scheme, there's a certain element of community facilities provided on site. So there's a list. So there's cafes and there's other facilities. I think it's all contained within the committee report. But there's a lot of elements and there's of on-site provision for the extra care residents, as well as mobility scooters provision as well.
Thank you. And I'd remind you that active travel includes mobility scooters. Ian Perry, is this a point of clarification?
It is. It's just to clarify, you mentioned bird and bat boxes. How many and where will they be?
Well, that's going to be as a condition. So there's I think on the report we've there's a recommendations all contained within the ecology report that's listed as a condition. I think it's 37, I think. So that will all be prior to commencement of development, all that kind of biodiversity enhancements will be provided on site. So the numbers will all be agreed through that condition then.
Thank you, Mr. Green. And Councillor Wilson, you.
Yeah, I just want to answer certain questions that have been raised, especially by Councillor Payne.
If this is answering, then it's not a point of clarification. You can do that.
It is, Chair.
No, it's a point of clarification for Mr. Green, not for.
Okay.
Not for other councillors.
I'll leave it to my comments later on.
You'll be able to contribute now in the debate as local member. I'll be calling you first, unless I saw Lisbon Nett's hand Dylan, thank you very much for your time. There are no more points of clarification. I can let you go off and you continue to watch if you want. Liz, you've got your hand up as local member. You can come in now.
Super. Thank you, Chair. This is an area very close to my heart. I was actually born in Myrtle Close, and it's part of Stanwell Ward is part of a post-war council housing development that provided homes for very many people that are still Penarth residents. But one of the problems of those sorts of developments is that there was little or no infrastructure. They were an awful lot of houses that were, built as standard construction, and it's something that we discuss an awful lot in council about. Have communities got the right sort of infrastructure? And infrastructure is not just about whether you've got a shop or a GP surgery. It's about have you got the right type of homes? And I know that there have been some objections, but I've also spoken to many other people and many other older people who are fearful for their future and how they can retain their dignity and independence as they go forward. We don't have such facilities. We don't have extra care facilities in Eastern Vale. And if people have seen Golau Caredig and the amazing work that does in Barry, we want those all across the Vale. And we need this development in the Eastern Vale.
Can I interrupt a minute, Liz? Remind you, you've only got 3 minutes.
Yeah, OK, I'll be very quick. But this is linked to sheltered housing and a care home. It provides perfect facilities for older people in the community and is also adapted for people with dementia so that they are not confused by moving places. And why shouldn't older people enjoy living in the countryside? I've actually visited the site frequently with the ecology team and looked at all the various considerations, and I will say that I know that the other local member and myself will be all over this to make sure that the environment is fully respected in any development should it be passed today. So thank you very much for the time, Chair, and I really hope that we can provide people of Eastern Vale with dignity and independence for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, we move now to, unless, Stephen, you've got any comments on points raised, which I don't think you will have.
Not specifically at the moment, no. Happy to come back as and when. Thank you.
In that case, we'll move to the debate, and Mark, you as local member as well, but on the committee, have the right to speak first.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you very much for the presentation already, Stephen, on this application. I consider it to be a great application, and I'll tell you for several reasons. Firstly, that it's provided much needed extra care facility in this part of the Vale, which we do not have at all. And really, if you look at the development in Barry and what it's done to that area, it's really, really good. That's the first point. The second point I've also added is how sensitive we've done this application in terms of the area around it. We've looked at the tree management plan, and we looked at about the transplant of trees and moving the trees on the basis of 2-to-1, which will further enhance the canopy of the area. And I think that's a real good thing. We also looked at the sensitivity in terms of hedgehogs and reptiles in the area, the slow worms as well. And I think that's all vital. And that just shows you the amount of care and consideration. I also like to note the fact that we put in some TPOs around the border of the area, so it will protect the residents who live in the nearby the new housing estate nearby as well. So there will be some sort of good border around it, and that will soften that development as well. So I think we've done really good things. I think the important bit that I'm not got a concern about, but I think myself and Councillor Burnett will be looking at will be the construction of it, and to make sure that the residents in Myrtle Close are not unduly inconvenienced by this application, and that that there'd be full consideration and respect of them. And we'll obviously be looking at hours of the construction of the site. We're obviously looking at road movements on there. Wheel washing facilities are also quite important. I know with any construction nearby, that's some active consideration there. the other thing I do like about this application is that you are widening that footpath to the bus stop. And I was going to answer the point that Councillor Payne made. It is roughly about 200 metres, probably in many ways slightly less than that. But to be honest, it's quite a straight walk, slightly steep, so slightly uphill going towards, but not unduly. People will have the opportunity to stop and then to move on to get that bus stop. And there is a seating arrangement at that bus stop as well. I wonder perhaps we could look into perhaps improving that bus stop a bit further as well. So if we have inclement weather, so people feel a bit more protected. And that's the only question I've really got for Stephen in terms of that. But I would like to move officer's recommendation. I know other people probably want to speak, but I like to move it anyway.
Yeah, there are a number of speakers. Thank you, Mark. Should I have mentioned that there was one item, late reps, I think, was that relating to this one?
Oh, I've covered that.
Yeah,
Chairman.
that's okay. Thank you. Right, in that case, the next hand I see up is Sandra Perks.
Hi, I'll second officer's recommendation. I just want to speak as well. Being one of the councillors who sits on Homes and Safe Communities scrutiny committee, I think this may be something that we've discussed on there, is the older persons village that we're hoping to have within Penarth, which I think is in the local development plan, if I'm not mistaken. Hopefully I'm not getting things wrong, but I think, yeah, this with the demographic makeup of the Vale going to be a lot more older people living here in comparison to other places in Wales. I think we definitely need to have the provision of this social housing, and if this is the start of the older people's village, then I welcome it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Champion, your hand is up next.
Thank you. Perhaps Stephen could clarify from the matters arising about the arrow pointing to the wrong amenity space.
Matters arising. Sorry, which?
So
wasn't sure there was anything
from Dylan Green.
Yeah.
Summary of comments. The arrow showing the indicative location of private amenity spaces in the wrong location on page 133.
133. Let me have a look at my report a second. We've certainly clarified all the points raised by Mr. Green in the matters arising response by the officer. Let's have a look, sorry, apologies. I mean, if I can just share my share my screen. So the amenity space for the over 55 provision is in the courtyard. And again,
I'm not seeing your screen, Stephen.
Okay, apologies. Is that coming up now?
Yeah, it's coming up now,
okay.
Steve.
Apologies for that. So as it showed in the CGI, particularly because of the nature and sort of dementia-friendly nature of the development, the internal layout has got the the amenity space in the internal courtyard. There's also indicatively an area of amenity space shown for the flatted development. Again, this is indicative. Helen Winsell is actually who's the case officer, who obviously knows it in much greater detail than myself. I'm happy if Helen wants to come in and perhaps clarify that point. Thanks, Helen.
Okay, I will do. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Chair. So the point that Mr. Green was raising is elsewhere in the report there was an extract from the plan that Steve has currently got on screen showing the indicative private amenity space for the over 55s development, which is this space that you can see in the very northern corner of the development. because it's basically taking a snapshot of part of the plan, the arrow where it says walk-ups that you can see on the plan at the moment, part of that was actually shown on that plan, but that arrow was never intended to point to that amenity space. It just happened because it was on there on the snapshot of the plan.
Okay.
Right. Are you satisfied with that, Councillor Champion?
Yes, Chair. Thank you.
Right. If you say your hand down, Councillor Ernest is next hand up.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm on or not, Chairman.
Yes, you are.
Yeah,
Yes, you
okay, thank you. I've been very interested to listen to the social comments that have come forward from a number of members so far. We're sitting here as a planning committee tonight, and whilst the principles of the development in social terms are, I'm sure, well recognised, the reality is that we need to look at the planning aspects and the impact on the area of the development. Now, the first point I was going to make is that clearly this is using an area woodland, which is very clearly shown in the photographs. I understand that it's come forward in the it's an allocation MG2 in the housing allocations, which of course does put, as it were, the kiss of death on the land. But nevertheless, it's very much an amenity area at the moment, and with considerable tree cover, albeit that many of the trees there are not particularly mature. When you actually look at the plan, and we've got the plan in plan form in front of us, it's a pretty large area altogether that the outline application, the land outlined in red, covers. And I think that the concept of the development is acceptable, but I am very concerned for all those residents who live in the vicinity of the development that a lot of this natural land is being lost. I mean, it might almost have formed part of an extension to Cosmiston Lakes Country Park, but I don't see that as being mentioned in any way in the report at the present time. So I have to say that I'm not against the development per se, but I do have considerable number of objections on as the way in which the land usage is being used, and the various options that have been put forward for removing trees. I think is a non-starter. I think if you take mature trees away, you're going to have many, many years of relatively barren land in which renewals will be planted, but not necessarily come to maturity. So those are concerns that I have, Chairman. I suspect the committee is going to approve the application, but again, I make the points that I think the loss of some of this wooded land is a great pity for Penarth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest. Stephen, did you want to respond specifically to that?
Good point to come back. Sorry, just jumping back to some previous the local member, Councillor Wilson, just to clarify on the construction side, condition 47 is a CTMP, so that's a construction traffic management plan. So that will deal with hours of operation, hours of delivery, etc., etc. We've even got a condition that requires a survey of the condition of the road in Myrtle Close to make sure that any damage by the developer is rectified. Just on the bus stop issue, and the report does go into detail on that, and we are actually seeking improvements to the existing bus stop because, again, we think it's important that that bus stop is improved. And that's part and parcel then of the widening of that footway to 3.5 metres, and it's been agreed that those costs of those, if you can call them off-site works, will come off the sustainable transport contribution. Just moving on to the issue of trees, again, that's been a common theme when we've been dealing with the application and through the pre-app stage. So we've got a little bit of some literature to show you on that. So what we've done is, this is Kilganhall Farm, which is now built out. So from a starting point of view, and I think this has been put in the report by Helen. This allocated site is a residual part of the original allocation of the of Cogan Hall Farm under the UDP. This was effectively part of the site that was never finally built out. So this is the master plan for the site, and as you can see, it's always envisaged that the site. So this is the remaining part of the allocation, and N3 is broadly the area of the current planning application. So it was always intended that this is going to be developed. It's also worth noting that this allocation being rolled forward hasn't just been rolled forward. It went through a public inquiry. The inspector looked at the suitability of rolling the site forward from the UDP, and it passed the inspector in terms of the acceptability bit and the impacts on trees and ecology, etc. Just a bit of history as well. It's surprisingly, back in 2009, other than the sort of perimeter hedgerow and trees that obviously pre-existed, there were really very, very few trees within the site. So actually, and as the report says, as we work through the years, the tree coverage has started to build itself up. And even in 2013, 2017, the tree coverage is not that significant. And this is the point made in the report that this sort of larger area which is being removed is, and as Mr. Green has alluded, is a quite immature area of woodland with whips, etc. And the reality is, a lot of those trees just wouldn't die, and the density of how it's generating is never going to sustain itself into a proper woodland. But we've worked carefully with the applicants here to get as good as we can a scheme to certainly replace the TPO trees that are being lost at a 2-for-1 ratio, and all the other trees to be lost. We are seeking that they are replaced on a 1-to-1 basis, and that's going to be clarified by the planning condition. And another thing definitely worth noting is, in terms of, whilst clearly that area does provide visual amenity, it's not public space that the public can currently access or have legal rights to access. That it is council land that is effectively fenced off. There might be some access points unauthorised, but it's effectively fenced off private land that is not public. It's not open space. It's not community space. It's private land. So they're not losing this space. There might be an impact, some degree of impact on visual amenity, but it's not space that they are losing in terms of any recreation space. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. We have a few more speakers. Councillor Cowpe, you have your hand up next.
Thank you, Chair. I've not got any concerns about this application, except that, and I'm very gratified to hear that there will be a cafe and some space where people can gather together. But I think what's happened in some other applications in the past in the Vale, that there has been something for communal space, but then during the build, it was decided not to do that and just build another housing outlet instead. And I do feel very strongly that these kind of housing for the over 55s should have a public area, a cafe or a room that can be used as consultation or that sort of thing. So what would happen if this planning application went through and then it was decided halfway through it, oh no, we're not going to bother with that now?
Can I point out that Extra Care is a catered facility, so it would need to have that facility within the development.
Sorry. Yeah, as Councillor Thomas has said, obviously I'm not aware of the kind of legislative restrictions that the Extra Care facility would have, but they are probably bound, and certainly in terms of being affordable housing and access to affordable housing and the grants, etc., that they would need to have that sort of internal provision. But from a simplistic planning point of view, if there were to be any material changes to the internal layout, we are approving the plans and all the supporting documents. So if there's a change to the internal layout and they at a loss of the cafe or any recreation or communal spaces, that. And if there's any external changes, that might need permission. It can be quite difficult. If someone's changing a storeroom into a small kitchen area, that probably wouldn't need consent. But I think the comfort that we have here is that we are dealing with one of our sort of partner RSLs and they need to make sure that those facilities are provided. It wouldn't be an extra care facility if those facilities were taken away. So it's kind of self-governing in that sense.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And then the final hand up is Councillor Perry.
Again, yeah, well, lots of merits for the application, particularly when I look at the image from 2009. And the but is the Vale Glamorgan Council has declared a nature emergency. What does that mean? Yeah, and we've heard today there's 375 trees plus planted by nature. And apparently nature's not planted them very well and a lot will die. And yet the Welsh Government are going out there planting trees. Many of the trees the Welsh Government plant will also die. There seems to be a myth that if humans plant trees, they will live, and if nature plants them, they're all in the wrong place and they'll die, so we might as well get rid of them. So, you know, that we'll say there's a much needed development here, but people in countries where there are rainforests have got the same argument. And if we're going to take down our trees that may be 13 years old, who are we to tell them they shouldn't be doing that there? So we've declared this nature emergency. It seems to be meaningless. Lots of residents say it's a bit meaningless, and I don't think it's been given enough thought or enough weight in this. And although I fully support the need for this sort of development, I think the time may have just passed. And if this had come forward a decade ago, yes, but today I think the nature's had a vote, had a bit of a say, and is saying, actually, I've taken over this space. So that's my thought.
I'm happy to come back on that, Chairman. Just obviously, you know.
Before you do, I mean, we have one more hand up, and maybe we can hear from Councillor Birch, and then you could answer both. Is that right?
Thank you. What I would like to say is that I quite take on board what Councillor Perry is talking about with trees, but he may be in the fortunate position where in his ward people are not ringing him constantly looking for accommodation that the council is simply unable to provide. Our housing list is long. And this is the kind of facility where people are able to go in over 55 and remain possibly there possibly for the rest of their lives, because the accommodation is such that it can be used for people who are, you know, becoming infirm, etc., need extra help and so forth, and are able to use these facilities. And I think that is very important. I mean, I was reassured by Stephen Butler pointing out that how many trees are going to be planted on the site. Yes, there are going to be some cleared for it, but there are TPOs around the edges of the facility, and there will be other trees planted on, my understanding was, a one-to-one basis for those that have been cleared. So, yes, OK, we've got a climate emergency and we are concerned about nature, but I'm also concerned about living people in my ward who simply do not have anywhere to live or are living in inadequate or inappropriate housing that could be better used by other people. You know, elderly people living in council houses that cannot be adapted to their needs, when we could be putting or allowing them to use the facilities that are going to be built and put families into those homes. And I think that that's a really big thing that we all need to be thinking about. I know every councillor that I have ever spoken to has housing need at the top of their list, because it is such an important issue nowadays. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Birch. Stephen, do you want to come back now then?
Just to sort of pick up on both those comments, really. So again, in terms of the climate and obviously the separate nature emergency, again, I'm conscious that this issue is raised on nearly every single application we deal with, particularly on sites where there are trees. Officers, first and foremost, do everything possible to try and mitigate and reduce the impact on trees. And so the officer here has worked significantly hard trying to come up with a scheme to offset the impacts as far as is practically possible. I'm not saying the problem here is that, but we are dealing with an allocated site. We're dealing with a site that's gone through a public inquiry for the LDP. The site's been rolled on. The site did have outline planning permission. And it's not just simply the loss of trees. Again, we are doing everything we can to mitigate that. but we are seeking ecological enhancements as well, those which are not currently there. So it's not just a numbers game of number of trees lost and number of trees gained. Those ecological impacts will, we feel, provide a wider, certainly wider benefits than some of those trees, of which many are quite immature, and as I say, would have died off anyway. It's a difficult application, but we've done the most that we can really do in trying to offset the impacts. And just to emphasise again, in terms of the numbers, it's 2 for 1, so we're seeking double the amount of trees for those that are protected. Where the trees are not protected, we are seeking 1 for 1. So in terms of actual tree numbers, we are seeking a net gain, but we're also seeking a net gain in terms of ecological enhancements as well, which currently, if that woodland were just to be left, we wouldn't be getting those. So, and again, more generally, it's all about the planning balance, as Councillor Birch has said. We have to balance. We can't say no development. We can't say no growth. We need to look at the needs of the local residents in the eastern part of the Vale against the impact on these trees. And often it is a difficult balance, but in this case, the balance is erred on the side of there being acceptable development. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Stephen. Councillor Perry, I see you've got your hand up again. Is this a new matter?
Yeah, it's just that our government's saying exactly the opposite in Brazil and Indonesia. And I think that is a bit of an issue that people will raise. That, like I said, great proposal, but in 2022, it's the wrong site for me.
Right, thank you very much for that. That being the case, we have this officer's recommendations have been moved and seconded. Councillor Champion, you have your hand up.
Are we approving both the outline and the full?
We are, yes.
Will the outline be coming back to committee?
So just to explain matters, so we are approving in full the over 55 accommodation. So the outline element, if recommendation goes through, we'll be granted outline permission, and then we could have either one or a number of reserved matters applications. So often reserved matters can be dealt with under officer delegation, particularly on a site which is allocated. We would, certainly we would be happy to put a like an informative note that that the reserved matters could be reported back to committee. I suspect in reality they would be, given the nature and the size of the development. So it's likely that they would be reported back anyway, generally under our scheme of delegation and the number of units themselves. So we could put an informative on if you felt that you really had to see a decision on reserve matters.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I would like to support that those reserve matters do come back to planning committee, because I do think it's such an important application this is, and I do think we need to give it credit by going back to planning committee on that.
Okay, we're happy to add that in as an informative, or I don't think it can be a condition. It's just something that we'd have to note on the decision, and officers would note.
That's okay, right?
Yeah.
Given that, we are now voting on officers' recommendations. Do we have anybody actively against? Councillor Perry, I see your hand. Anybody else? In that case, there being apparently no one else opposed to this, I take it that this is overwhelmingly passed and propose to move on to the final one on our agenda for this evening. I note,
sorry,
Councillor Councillor Perry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You've got your hand up again.
Yeah, that goes through unanimous, although I'd vote against. Just to clarify
I didn't say unanimous. I said overwhelmingly passed.
Okay.
I did note that you were voting against. Moving on then to the next and last one for this evening, and that's 2022-00802 Oblique Full Cutarala House, Mickleston Le Pitt Road, Mickleston Le Pitt. We have one speaker on this. I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember who's presenting this now.
Ian.
Ian is.
Ian, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Right, so this is an application to complete the construction and change the approved use of an outbuilding at Curtaralla. As background, in 2018, a building was approved to be used as a boiler house, which is shown on these plans here. So a sort of single-storey L-shaped building. The building is currently partway through construction. So I'll show you these photos here. So the approved building was in cladding, I should add at this point. You'll notice it's being constructed in brick currently. The applicant has come back in advising that rather than seeking to support the site with LPG boilers, they now want to use air source heat pumps, which means that the approved building is no longer required for the purpose previously approved. So this application is to allow the use of the building as staff welfare facilities. The application states that there are 4 to 6 staff on site most days, and that this would provide an area for staff to rest and yeah, you see that the internal layout shows an office, a welfare area, kitchenette, etc. The applicant's agent has agreed that they would overclad the brick with cladding. So bar some relatively minor changes to the pattern of fenestration, this building is extremely similar to the one approved previously. So the main issue, as set out in the report, is really the acceptability of the use. The building remains pretty well screened from public viewpoints. Views from Curtaralla Road, glimpsed at best, given the sort of nature and the things of the tree cover. So we don't consider that the building, as proposed now, is going to have a materially different impact on the character of the area than the previously approved building. So the main consideration that officers have set out in the report is whether the proposed use, almost like a kind of an ancillary staff welfare area, is acceptable in planning terms, given that the building itself has been approved previously and can be continued to be constructed. As I said before, the changes to the external appearance won't make a significant difference to how it appears in the kind of in the wider context. In the course of assessing the application, obviously officers consider, what's changed, why has this changed, what were the applicant's intentions, but in reporting this, we do need to separate ourselves from applicant's intentions. We just need to look at what is proposed now. Is it an acceptable form of use? And I think officers are of the view that it's difficult to sort of conceive a tangible harm that would result from this building being used for staff welfare facilities. So consequently, the recommendation is for approval, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Franks, I think, has indicated that he'd like to speak to this. If you're still there.
I am.
Chris. In that case, normal rules, 3 minutes from the moment you start speaking. Go for it.
Okay, thank you. Residents in Mickleston have serious concerns about a series of projects taking place in Curtaralla. This is certainly not the first. It's not only affecting residents, but a huge number of people who enjoy walking the area from across the Vale and beyond. It's adjacent to the very popular Woodland Trust land, one of the most well-used Woodland Trust areas in Wales. These residents consider it's having an adverse impact on the character of the village, from one of relative peace and quiet into a dormitory village. Unfortunately, it has also led to an increase in traffic, and this is proving to be a major hazard. There have been a number of road incidents and near misses that could have resulted in significant harm, especially as the people who do visit the area include whole families with little children, dog walkers, cyclists, and horse riders. And this month, a service vehicle returning from Cotarella area collided with a resident's car, causing significant damage. And I understand there is police involvement in this. So with the increasing number of residential developments, these have included short-term lets and holiday accommodation. And unfortunately, sometimes these developments have led to antisocial behaviour from some of the, I'll use the word, holiday makers. I'm told from past experience, there's also concern that any new building on the site could possibly be converted into further holiday or short-term accommodation. And the scale of these developments is adding significantly to the village's built environment. So I'd like to stress for those members who aren't aware of the area, there's only one way in and one way out by car. And that's a very narrow lane serving the village, which is unacceptable and unsuitable for the volume of traffic being generated. Thank you very much for your time, Chair and colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Franks. You just hang on a second to see if there's any points of clarification. And I see two hands up, but I don't know if they're points of clarification. Helen, you were indicating that you have. The other two hands went up before you started speaking, so I can't see how they could be. Helen, in that case.
Sorry. Can I just, what entrances are you saying? Which narrow lane is the vehicle entrance?
If you, would you know Penny Turnpike? Oh, you've gone. Would you know?
Sorry, I just thought I'd share the plans in case that assisted with your explanation.
Yeah, I know the area really well.
Oh, right. So you're coming along Penny Turnpike from Leckwith, head into Dinas Powys, and there's a right-hand turn into Mickleston, and that's it. There's no other access for roads.
Okay, thanks.
I'm happy to share that. I've got the street view up for everybody's benefit.
Okay.
Okay.
That's it. Well done.
Thank you very much. I see two other hands up, but I presume that they're for the general discussion rather than
yes, that's
points of
correct.
clarification.
Yeah.
Right. In that case, I will ask Marion Kaup as local member whether she wishes to speak first. If not, we'll move on to the discussion.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to speak.
Yes, you called it in, I think, Marion, as well. So.
Yes. Sorry, I think my camera should be on now. Yes, I've been down there, and the concern is for the number of holiday lets that are permitted in Cotarella Estate, there is an enormous amount of traffic, and there is an enormous amount of rubbish coming out of the estate because people see, the locals are seeing the extent of that coming out. So they are kind of worried that actually there's more going on in there than we actually know about. And because of the holiday atmosphere there, people renting out, there's been a lot of noise pollution, music going on. It's been, it's a venue. And as you know, when you're in the countryside, sound travels a lot more than it does. There's no buildings to absorb the sound. So when they have discos there and live music, it's very, very loud. And the amount of traffic, the heavy vehicles going in and out, delivering building supplies or whatever they're delivering, there's a whole load of them going in, apparently, on a daily basis. That seems to be more than is needed. So there are a lot of concerns there about the traffic and about the safety of walkers in the area, because there is no pavements on the road going down there to Cotarella.
I mean, I'd remind everyone that we're talking here about an application that is for staff. How is it phrased? Not staff accommodation. Staff welfare. Staff welfare which doesn't involve. I mean, the staff are there, the traffic and everything else will be there anyway.
Yeah, I recognise that, Chair, and I recognise what Ian, the planning officer, has said, that we can't assume intent, but they've built, you know, if they get permission for this, they can apply later then for it to become holiday accommodation.
Yeah, but then have to be looked at again. Right, carrying on, Councillor Ernest, your hand up is up next.
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Firstly, I'm very interested in what the local members have had to say. It's come as quite a surprise to me, the comments they've made, because just reading the document, the papers before us tonight, I see little or no reference to a tourism facility operating there. The applicant appears to be an individual. We know what the details of the application is for, provide staff facilities, and there's absolutely no report at all from officers or from the tourism sector or leisure relating to the apparent existing usages of the site. And when I hear about further development of further tourism accommodation and other activities, my first question is to ask, where in the planning history is there any reference to that at all? And there appears to be none whatsoever. I was going to, at first glance, approve this application or give my approval to it. I'm not at all inclined to do that subsequent to what we've heard this evening. And whilst I recognise that there should be facilities for staff, and the application appears to meet that objective, what it doesn't really address in overall terms is the actual use of the site, the overall use of the site, and any implications behind that. And I think, Chairman, what we might do is ask officers to reinvestigate that and put forward a report to us at the next meeting, which outlines existing tourism use of the site, how the site is being used and developed, and bring into account the traffic implications that the local members have already raised with us this evening. Thank you.
It may well be that that can be dealt with this evening. Councillor Champion, you have your hand up next, and then I'll go back to Ian to address the matters.
Yes, my point was I presume the officers are aware of all the things that have been built there before, and they are carrying out the usage that they've been given planning for. And also, although it's not a planning matter, if it was designed and being half built as a boiler room, can you talk to your building control colleagues, because there might be insulation and other things that need to be sorted out.
Okay, Ian, do you want to? Ian Robinson, do you want to come back and?
Yeah, fine. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I can certainly draw building control's attention to it, and without planning enforcement going there now, I couldn't say hand on heart that everything there is as per any approvals that would need to be, you know, investigated by enforcement now. I guess the sort of key, as you mentioned earlier, Chair, it's not a tourism proposal, so we're not looking at the accumulation of holiday let impacts with other holiday lets. In terms of the reasonableness or necessity to defer this to establish more about that, I think the key point here is nothing that is proposed changes or is changed by what else is happening at the site. So this isn't a proposal which is to bring more staff onto the site or bring more traffic onto the site or do anything different on the site than staff having a different indoor area as a welfare area. So whether or not there is X amount of tourism units, what the impacts of those are, or whether they're being used differently to any permitted development, permitted use or approved use, isn't really material to the acceptability of this use, which doesn't represent an intensification of the use of the site. If an application was subsequently submitted for a tourism use of the building, frustrating as that would be, if that were to infer a desire along to do that, it really can't be part of our assessment of the merits of what's before us. We would have the ample opportunity to look at the merits of that, and if another tourism unit on site on top of others meant that there were amenity problems, then that's certainly material and potentially a ground to refuse an application of that type. I'm not saying we would refuse it, we have to look at it in the round, but it certainly would be material, and it certainly would be a ground that we could refuse the application on. A subsequent application would be the time for making that assessment, though.
Thank you, Ian. On that, I still have hands up. Councillor Perry.
Yeah, this is in effect a retrospective planning application because they've started building something different to what was agreed before.
Yes, it's part retrospective, that's right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hodges.
Thank you, Chairman. This was an application which was agreed for a boiler house, which is now not necessary. Surely if the applicants had wanted staff welfare, that should have been catered for previously, I would have thought. It seems strange now that they just seem to be piggybacking on something that they no longer require. So I'm a bit dubious on this one, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Nick. And finally, Councillor Cope again.
Thank you, Chair. Ian's just said something that has caused me concern because I understood that a visit had been made to Curtaralla and that everything was okay. In other words, that all of the plans that they've previously been approved, that everything was checked. But I think you said just now, Ian, that you don't know that all of the planning applications that they've done before have been built in accordance with what they've submitted. So that causes me concern because the small number of holiday lets that are supposed to be there, it defies the amount of traffic. And I'm thinking, why do the staff need this sort of support staff area, staff welfare area? Probably because they're very busy. They may be very busy because there's a lot more accommodation there than actually has been agreed. So I definitely think that there's something raising alarm bells. And I really did think, because Ian and I spoke about this, I really did think that when the enforcement officer went, that he did see the whole area, he or she. But you've indicated now you don't know.
No, sorry, that's not what I meant. What I meant
right,
was,
okay.
Sorry, what I meant was, if I couldn't hand on heart say today, as of today, that everything there is in accordance with how it should be, because it's not impossible that subsequent to an enforcement visit, something might have changed. I'm not saying I think that is the case or that we have found any issue for concern previously. All I mean is the modern position of 6:30 this evening, I wouldn't put my life on, that everything's there, because it would need another visit, an up-to-date visit to verify that's still the case. But sorry, I didn't mean to give you cause for concern that it hadn't previously been established. No.
All right, Councillor Williams.
Thank you. We've had quite considerable discussion on this now, and I recognise that the welfare facility is a sort of, it seems like a red flag, but when you listen to the report or look at the report, it explains what the situation is currently, and that they got the welfare staff alongside the tourists coming in. So legitimately, that suggests that they want to put them in a separate area. So on that basis, I appreciate what Mr. Ian Robson's put. The other applications have all been there. The place is established as a tourism. That's not what this application is about. It's about a welfare facility in retrospect, albeit. But however, I'm supporting this application, and in fact, I'll move it now. For
Thank you, Eddie. Yeah, nobody has. Helen, you've got your hand up.
And I second that, please.
Thank you very much. So it's moved and seconded. I see no other hands. Can we move to a decision? And would anybody like to indicate if they are opposed?
I'm opposed to it, Chair.
Councillor Cowp, Councillor Hodges.
And I'm opposed,
There's a
Councillor
few.
Cave, Chair.
There's a few. Right. We'll have a vote. Mark, if you could arrange, please. Mark?
Sorry, I'm
Okay,
trying
Chair,
to lower
yeah.
my hand. Sorry.
I'm just
Sorry.
going to go to the vote now, Chair. Bear with me a second. So, again,
Marion, sorry, hang on a sec. Marion, your hand's up for a reason.
No, I'm trying to lower it and it won't allow me.
It's gone now.
It's gone.
Has,
It's gone
yeah.
now. You've done it.
Thank you. Sorry.
Mark.
Right. No, that's fine. Sorry, Chair. Right. Just to start then with Councillor Birch, for or against.
Officers' recommendations, please.
Okay, I'll put that as 4. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bruce. Councillor Bruce.
Sorry, I lost my remote control. 4.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bruce. Councillor Cave.
Against.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Champion.
4.
Thank you, Councillor Champion. Councillor Cowp.
Against.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Go on to Councillor Drake.
4.
Councillor Ernest.
Against.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Councillor Gilligan has sent apologies. Councillor Hodges.
Against.
Councillor Johnson isn't here either. So Councillor Payne.
For officers' recommendation.
Councillor Perks.
For officers' recommendation.
Councillor, sorry, Councillor Perry.
I'm against officer recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Stallard.
Obliged, in favour.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor. Councillor Thomas.
4 officers' recommendations.
Councillor Williams.
For officers' recommendations.
Lovely, thank you for confirming, Councillor. And finally, Councillor Wilson.
For officers' recommendations.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Wilson. I'll just go for the numbers now. 1, 2, 3. I make it 10 for and 5 against, Chair.
I agree. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, everyone. Looking at the agenda, I have any items under 10 and there's no part 2. Thank you all for this evening and have a good evening for the rest of it, and hopefully the weather will improve. Night night. Thank you.
Thank you.